Hey, what's going on, guys? So today I've got a new controller alternative for the Nintendo Switch. Nixie did send this over to me for review, but I've never heard of them before at all, so I'm kind of going into this a little skeptical. I've been a fan of the original Joy-Cons from Nintendo, but the biggest downside for me is actually how small they are. They're built really well, they're just really uncomfortable for me to hold outside of using it in handheld mode or as a controller. That isn't to say I hate them, the original Joy-Cons are fine. And to cut to the chase, off the bat, this new gamepad from Nixie is easily my new go-to controller for my Switch. The only thing confusing though is these look identical to the Binbok ones I've been seeing online. I was looking at them not too long ago and they look legitimately identical. But either way, I'll tell you all about what I love and what I hate about this Nixie control pad, as well as jump into some of the unique features. Okay, so jumping into the unboxing, there's really not much to it. I was a little skeptical at first though with the packaging. It really doesn't seem to be of good quality. Poor packaging usually means a poor product. But on the inside, on top, there's the gamepad itself, as well as the user manual, which I actually did read. And to my surprise, there's a USB A to C cable. I wasn't quite sure what that's for. And looking at the features on the box, this controller looks to have wireless support, which is good considering some third-party Joy-Cons only work wired or handheld. Both of these Joy-Cons do have vibration as well as gyro support, and its primary feature includes RGB on each joystick. But not mentioned on the packaging, you also have one back-end remappable button per Joy-Con, as well as turbo options, which I guess could be useful for shooters or any sort of other repetitive button smashing. So actually getting this in hand, it really isn't too bad. The first thing I realized and appreciate all on its own is the size. As mentioned, my biggest gripe with the OG Joy-Cons is that they're just too small for me personally. And taking a look at the size difference between these are absolutely monstrous. The ones I received are white, but they do come in black as well as some other colors. In terms of the actual quality, they feel fine, but they are really plasticky, if that makes sense. I did end up weighing these, and they're actually almost identical to the original Joy-Cons, despite being so much larger. I did notice the RGB light seems to bleed through the plastic, so it's definitely super thin plastic, but I don't think that'll have any issues on performance. Just don't rage and smash the controller, because I have a feeling it would shatter pretty easily. The buttons are clicky, although a little mushy when compared to the original cons. The original Joy-Cons have like a tactile bump or clickiness to them, whereas these just have a classic button press feel. In the hand though, this definitely reminds me more of a full controller you'd find on a PlayStation or an Xbox, and for me that's a good thing. And putting these on the Nintendo Switch itself is making this thing even bigger, so if portability is something important to you, there is practically zero pocketability with these attached, although you could definitely still fit them into a bag. A nice touch on these as well is that the bottoms are flattened out, which allows you to keep the controller upright. Simple feature, but this is a big one for me. Overall, the build is fine and hopefully it holds up over time. I heard a lot of the OG Joy-Cons are having stick drift issues after not so long, and I didn't really experience that, but we'll see how these ones do. Okay, so setting these up is actually really simple as connecting them to the rails of the Switch if you want to get going right away. And I felt like a dummy at first because I couldn't figure out how to get these Joy-Cons to wake up my Nintendo Switch. Turns out you just have to go through the syncing process as you would any other controller. But syncing them was simple enough, just following the on-screen instructions and we're good to go. When it comes to the RGB, it's a nice to have. I'm personally not really huge into RGB. I usually pick a static color of some sort and avoid any sort of breathing effects and stuff, but the RGB on here is bright enough, and using the back T button and clicking the joystick allows you to cycle through a bunch of colors as well as RGB itself. Apparently this does have a breathe effect. I didn't quite figure out how to get that going, but in terms of quality of the RGB, outside of the solid colors, it seems a little washed out, so it's not super vibrant, but it's still nice nonetheless. And the turbo function is simple enough as itself. While holding the T button on the back and just pressing your desired button, you can map this to whatever you need. I'm absolutely garbage at Fortnite, but I did load this up just to test this, and I can confirm it works. I can see using this to make a semi-auto weapon automatic, or if you're like me and just spamming through text on Legends Arceus, turbo to spam text is one of those things that you don't know that you're missing until you have it. In terms of the button mapping features, I can't say I've personally found it too useful yet, but it does work well. Per Joy-Con, you can map any button to this back button, but you can only map left Joy-Con buttons to the left mappable button, and the same for the right side. So for battery, each Joy-Con has a 500 milliamp hour battery. I've yet to get this to die since I'm not really gaming for 8 hours straight like I used to, and considering the USB cable that came with the controller, I was afraid you'd only be able to charge using the cable, but luckily these do charge from the Switch itself. If you need to, you can absolutely plug in the Type-C cable to charge separately though. And going into the battery section on my Switch, everything seems to be charging a-okay. And talking about some of the ways you can actually use these Joy-Cons, you can use them in handheld mode, you can use them as a controller, and of course you can use them separated as separate Joy-Cons. Using this as handheld is super comfy. Again, the size makes all the difference to me. I will say having the Switch be this long with these connected is definitely a little odd. It's weird having a handheld console be longer than a bag of milk. But compared to the original Joy-Cons, I do much prefer these in hand, and I was concerned it wouldn't fit in the dock, but there's zero issues there. It fits perfectly. But setting this up like a controller is absolutely fine. The plastic rails are a little tight though, so hopefully that loosens up over time. Unlike the Nintendo version, the center frame part does not have any sort of LED indicators, but the lights do shine through okay. Again, this feels more like an actual controller compared to two Joy-Cons in a frame. And of course, using these as two separate Joy-Cons is comfy as ever, but this still comes down to personal preference. And to compare these to the original Joy-Cons, I think it mostly comes down to personal preference as well, but I really do like these even still. They do feel a little cheap when it comes to the plasticiness and the clickiness of the buttons, but here's a quick summarization of what I love and hate about these. For what I love, the size is easily number one. This is absolutely the best thing for me here, and I am the perfect demographic for the size of these. The grip itself is actually really ergonomic and comfortable to hold, way better than the original Joy-Cons for that. And the Joy-Cons themselves are actually super clicky and are probably the best quality button on this controller. For what I hate, the vibration is just that. It's vibration. It's weird and awkward vibration. The original Joy-Cons are rumble, if that makes sense. When you do anything, there's a different intensity per action or per step, but with these Nixie Joy-Cons, it's just a straight up static vibration. It also has a bit of like a wind up time when the vibration just starts, and again, this is not the same as rumble. And the second thing I hate would just be the quality of the buttons themselves. I personally much prefer a tactile clickiness or bump to my buttons. I think these are a little mushy for my taste, but they'll do just fine until they don't, I guess. And overall, these are actually really good Joy-Con alternatives. The size gives a huge level of comfort, and you're not really sacrificing much for a great experience. In terms of the price, these come in under $50 US, so compared to the Nintendo's own being about $70 to $80 for a set, these do a great job. I went into this with very low expectations, but I was pleasantly surprised, so kudos to Nixie. If you're considering picking these up, there is a link below. I don't get any sort of commission for that, but it is there if you need it. Anyways, that's been it. Thanks for watching. Till next time.